They called her the Queen of Hearts. Young, beautiful, charming. But history barely remembers her name. She was only 19. A teenager, swept into a world of secrets, power, and silent death. Her crime, not treason, not betrayal, just love. This is not just a tale of a queen's fall. It is a haunting story of manipulation, surveillance, and state-sponsored cruelty so devastating it was buried beneath centuries of royal myth. Tonight, you'll uncover the truth the Tudors tried to erase. The real horror behind the execution of Catherine Howard. King Henry VIII's fifth wife was not the axe that ended her life, but the calculated machinery of destruction that made sure she died in pieces long before she reached the scaffold. The silence that followed her final scream still echoes through the stone corridors of Hampton Court. Catherine Howard was just a child when she entered the court, raised in the lax household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. Her early life was marked not by royal etiquette, but by negligence. She was barely educated, barely protected, and surrounded by men twice her age who knew how to exploit innocence masked as beauty. She never stood a chance. By the time she caught the eye of King Henry VIII, she was just 16. He was nearly 50. Obese, diseased, paranoid, but powerful, lethal, powerful. To him, she was a cure, a fresh start, a living fantasy that distracted from the rotting political corpses he'd left behind. To her, he was the crown. A royal marriage was not a love story, it was a sentence. The glittering court she entered became a gilded cage, its bars built from expectation, suspicion, and silent glances. Henry lavished her with gifts, jewelry, palaces, dresses embroidered with gold. But underneath the luxury was a man cracking, paranoid, violent, and always watching. And still, Catherine smiled, because she had to. Behind the scenes, the court was not blind. Whispers about her past circulated like poison in wine. About the music teacher, Henry Mano X. About the gentleman usher, Francis Dereham. About the private laughter behind locked doors before she became queen. She had once been young and careless. In Henry's world, that was enough to die. What began as gossip quickly escalated into a full-blown investigation. Spy masters listened. Servants turned into informants. Interrogations began quietly and ended in screams. Catherine was accused of adultery. But in the Tudor court, accusation was just another word for death sentence. The walls closed in. She was imprisoned inside Hampton Court, forbidden from leaving, forbidden from defending herself. Alone, isolated, surrounded by guards. And yet, the most terrifying part wasn't the physical confinement. It was the silence. Letters stopped arriving. The doors stopped opening. Her maids wouldn't meet her eyes. The Queen of England had become a ghost. When she was finally arrested, she didn't scream. She fainted. Not once, but twice. And when she awoke, she asked one question again and again. Will the king speak to me? He never did. Henry, the man who once called her his rose without a thorn, now referred to her only in legal documents. She had become a liability, a stain on his legacy, a problem to be removed. The trial was a formality. She was never allowed to speak in her own defense. Evidence gathered under torture, testimonies from enemies, and a king desperate to appear righteous, it all stacked against her like firewood awaiting a match. February 13th, 1542. The sun hadn't yet risen when Catherine was led from her cell in the Tower of London, the same tower where queens before her had walked in Boleyn. Her cousin had stood on the same scaffold. Catherine walked barefoot, dressed in black. The cold bit at her skin, but she didn't flinch. Witnesses said she walked with dignity, that her youth made it almost unbearable to watch. And then, she said something no one would forget. "I'd die a queen, but I would rather die the wife of Culpeper," a love she never even consummated. A man already executed. But that sentence, raw, broken, filled with longing, was the last thing she left the world. The executioner's axe fell just minutes later. She was 19. But the story doesn't end there, because what followed was one of the most chilling episodes in Tudor history. After Catherine's death, Henry VIII descended deeper into madness. He locked himself away, tormented by hallucinations, haunted by dreams of his dead wives. In the years after her death, royal chaplains avoided mentioning her name. Historians brushed her aside as promiscuous, foolish, unworthy. She became a warning, a whisper, a mistake. But the truth is far more disturbing. Catherine Howard was not executed for adultery. She was executed for being too human in a world that demanded silence, obedience, and sacrifice. She was executed because her past couldn't be erased. Because her love, her laughter, and her vulnerability made powerful men uncomfortable. She was not a villain. She was a victim of political theater where women were disposable and love was a liability. Her ghost is said to still haunt Hampton Court Palace. A young girl in white, screaming, begging for mercy, as she runs down the hallway toward the chapel. That hallway is now called the Haunted Gallery. They say if you walk there alone at night, you can hear her final footsteps. Not from fear, but from a desperate, final plea for life. A plea that never reached the king. Catherine Howard's story was buried under centuries of shame. But not today. Today, we remember her not as a foolish girl, but as a tragic symbol of a world where innocence was punished, where silence was survival, and where queens were made to kneel before the blade. She died young. She died forgotten. But not anymore.